My name is Javon Crowder. I'm doing my presentation on child abuse and neglect. Child abuse is an intentional or deliberate act of harm or threats of harm committed against a child, and there are three different types of child abuse. They include physical abuse, emotional abuse, and sexual abuse. Physical abuse is the intentional use of physical force against a child, such as hitting, kicking, choking, stabbing, shaking, burning, or other actions that could result in physical injury. Emotional abuse refers to actions and behaviors that harm a child's sense of self-worth or emotional well-being. Sexual abuse involves engaging a child in sexual acts, including fondling, rape, and exposing a child to other sexual activities. This type of abuse is the most underreported type of child abuse. Actual rates of sexual abuse against children are likely higher than those officially reported. Child neglect is a failure to meet a child's basic needs, including housing, food, clothing, education, and access to medical care. The definition of child neglect varies among states, agencies, and professional groups. Generally, child neglect can be defined as a failure to provide for a child's basic physical, emotional, or educational needs, or a failure to protect the child from harm or potential harm. Child neglect includes physical neglect, medical neglect, educational neglect, emotional neglect, and failure to supervise, which is failing to ensure that a child is not exposed to unnecessarily dangerous activities or environments. There are several characteristics that contribute to child abuse and neglect, such as parent or caregiver risk factors. Individual characteristics, which is if a parent has mental health issues or adverse response to stress and their trauma history. Substance abuse. Studies have shown that between 1 and 2/3 of child maltreatment cases involve substance use to some degree. Teenage parents. Studies of physical abuse in particular tell us that higher rates of child abuse occur when parents are in their teenage years. And additional factors contributing to the factors that I just stated are lower socioeconomic status, lack of social support, and high stress levels. Community risk factors also contribute to child abuse and neglect. The child's neighborhood conditions, such as low socioeconomic status, presence of violence in his or her vicinity, and social attitudes can place the child at great risk for maltreatment. Poverty can add to the probability of abuse and neglect. If this condition is added to other risk factors, including depression, substance abuse, and social isolation, the chances of maltreatment increase. Other factors occurring simultaneously, such as parent and child characteristics, family situations, community violence, and conditions, increase the risk as well. Child abuse isn't limited to one race, ethnic group, gender, or age group, or social economic status. To promote child safety and security, researchers often discuss reducing risk factors that put children at risk of abuse and neglect, while also increasing protective factors that help shield children from maltreatment. In 1974, CAPTA authorized funds for a state grant program focused on initial child protective intervention in cases of suspected abuse or neglect. CAPTA also set 18 as an age up to which states must have laws on reporting of child abuse and neglect that mandate a child protection system response. Federal and state laws define what constitutes the abuse and neglect of children. They also designate those who must report suspected child abuse and neglect, or make all citizens with reason to suspect abuse and neglect mandate reporters. State laws addressing abuse and neglect of children were passed in all 50 states following the 1962 amendments and the Social Security Act that required all states to include child protection in their children welfare systems. CAPTA also limits the term abuse and neglect to acts of failures to act by parents or caretakers. Some states do not so limit the perpetrators of abuse and neglect, but include reporting of child abuse and neglect allegedly committed by those outside of the child's home, as a recent example, sports coaches. Using the most recent data available from the Second National Survey of Child and Adolescent Well-Being collected in 2008-2009, we find that across America, 25% of child abuse reports are substantiated. Child abuse cases substantiated in rural and urban areas share many caregiver risk factors, such as drug and alcohol abuse and many family stressors. A greater share, 36% of higher income families, that is families with incomes greater than 20% of the federal poverty level in rural areas, have substantiated maltreatment reports than in urban areas. The types of child maltreatment substantiated are similar in rural and urban areas. Approximately 1/4 of cases with supervisory neglect and 1/4 of sexual abuse cases are substantiated. Although a higher percentage of physical neglect cases are substantiated in rural areas, 33% versus 19% in urban areas, the difference is only marginally significant. And that concludes my presentation.